The first variable we'd like to emphasize is sound. The volume of each note in a rudiment is determined by the velocity of the stick bead as it strikes the playing surface. Note that this is not always linked directly to stick height. The quality of sound is determined by the stick's reaction to the bead as it strikes the surface and the amount of pressure being exerted on the stick by the fingers. The second variable we'd like to emphasize is timing. We strive to smoothly speed the rudiment up and smoothly slow it down. We also attempt to achieve an equal amount of time between the speed up and the slowdown of each rudiment. The third variable we'd like to emphasize is motion. When we discuss motion, we will likely be referring to the up and down motion of the sticks, fingers, wrists, and elbows caused by the rotation of multiple pivot points in a given technique. For more information specifically on stick motion, watch one of our other videos entitled Vertical Bead Motion Through Stick Control. In this video, some horizontal motion will also be discussed. Another aspect of motion that we look at when breaking rudiments down is the speed of the motion in relation to the space of the notes being played at that moment in time. There are certainly more variables that can be discussed, but these are the three most popularly agreed upon in our experience. The manipulation of these variables in your drumming value system will determine the way that you perform rudiments. The most important variable to us is sound, followed by timing, and then motion. All of that being said, stick around, pun intended, to find out why we play the long roll like we do.
One popular method is the downstroke approach, where the player starts with the sticks in the down position and returns to that position after each stroke. At the beginning and at the end of the breakdown, when the tempo is slow enough, it is possible to stop the sticks in the down position. As the tempo increases, eventually the sticks will have to be moving in a continuous motion. This requires a transition in the stick motion from controlling the sticks down to moving them in a continuous rebounded motion. This transition has to happen twice, once on the way up and once on the way down. These transition areas can make it quite difficult to achieve the ultimate goal of the long roll breakdown, which should be to maintain a consistent volume and sound quality from the first note to the last note. Working on the long roll in this way can be a valuable tool in learning to control volume and sound quality, but in our opinion, it is not the best way to play a long roll breakdown in unison as a snare section.
In this portion of the video, I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of two different techniques used in breaking down the long roll. Without going into too much detail, we're going to talk about the stick motion that Earl Sturtz outlines in his book, The Sturtz Drum Instructor. Sturtz basically says that the second note of each hand should be played about half as high as the first, but with matching stick velocities. What we like about this method is that it argues consistency with what should be happening when a roll is played faster. We find that certain heights at certain speeds lend themselves to produce what we feel is a more natural volume level. Therefore, we prefer to let the tempo and volume determine the height of our sticks throughout the rudiment. In regards to the second note of each hand, Sturtz says that the drummer should, quote, exert a little snap or pressure behind them without striking the number ones any harder, end quote. So what we don't like about this method is that it doesn't feel natural for us to play a roll slowly with some notes at half height as powerfully as the notes will be at our high speed. Sanford Moeller basically taught that one should break a roll down by accenting the second note of each hand. One can achieve this volume change through changing the velocity of the stick as it strikes the playing surface. One way to do this is by changing the stick height. Another way is by incorporating the, quote, snap that we talked about in the Sturtz explanation, but at the same stick height as the first. Or you can simply combine the two and play a snapped note that is also higher. If you're interested in more of Moeller's ideas, look up The Art of Snare Drumming, or as some people call it, the Moeller Book. What we like about this method is that it challenges the drummer to overcome the tendency of a weak second sounding note. As sound is the number one thing that we strive to keep steady, We dislike this method because the sound cannot remain consistent all the way throughout the rudiment. We agree with Sturtz's view of this concept when he said, quote, "Any effect it could have on the roll beyond that point is more psychological than real," end quote. So basically, we took the Sturtz method and the Moeller method, met in the middle, and voila.
Our approach to breaking down the double stroke roll is centered around our goal of producing a strong and consistent sound on every note. This is a one-height rudiment which doesn't require any downstrokes. Therefore, we prefer to start in the up position and allow every stroke to rebound back to the up position. As the rudiment accelerates, we are able to gradually lower the stick height a little while maintaining the volume and sound quality that we established on the first note. From a technical standpoint, this is the simplest approach to achieving a consistent sound quality and volume in our opinion. The technique stays basically the same throughout the rudiment. The wrist is the primary lever for this rudiment. As the speed increases, we begin to incorporate the back fingers a bit more to help with the sound of the second note of each double. This is not something that we are necessarily conscious of or trying to do as we are performing the rudiment. It's just something that has to happen as the speed increases to a point where the wrist can no longer turn for each note of each double. The wrist remains the primary means of moving the stick while the arm and fingers play a supportive role. The more consistently you can maintain your chosen ratio of moving parts throughout the rudiment, the more consistent your double stroke roll will sound.